They push and hold. And I think this speaks to some of the recruitment because they have players who like to stay in the defensive side of the game. You get some players that just want to attack and they go, oh, no, we've got to defend now. Whereas there's some that switch on significantly both when they attack and when they defend. And I think Bulldogs have got the right personnel there. Secondly, one concern I have with the Bulldogs, and it will change by finals time because they'll just naturally tackle a bit harder. They are catchers and wrestlers. Okay. So in the ruck. So the Warriors had great success early on lowering the tackle height. So they, as in the contact height when they were carrying the ball, dropping to the ground quickly, playing the ball quickly. And the Bulldogs were at 6s and 7s. And then they had a lot of success probing those 3-in defenders on each side, the 2 and 3-in defenders. Like you said, why did it change? Now, I've had a call with all my older teams in particular that basically says if you're, and this is a bit sexist, I think, sorry, but if you're, well, it could work for girls too. If you're doing something good with your partner in the bedroom and they're clearly enjoying it, you don't go away from that, do you? And in a football game, when something's working, you do it until you think the opposition have caught you out. The reality is Bulldogs were struggling with it, but it's the Warriors' core skills and their execution that let them down. And this allowed the Dogs back into the game. I have no doubt the way to beat the Bulldogs, because they're not infallible at all. They looked like they were going to break last night to me. But the Warriors let them back in it, is to when a team's up and in, you can really hit holes at the ruck. You can put footwork on and find the deck a lot easier because there's not as many bodies coming into you. They didn't tackle that intensely last night, the Bulldogs. They were just more catching. I think they will tackle more intensely in the finals, which will put more pressure on their system. And then you just push the ball into those areas, +1, +2 out wide, make the Dogs defenders make a decision, and I think that's where they'll be found wanting. And the Warriors could have put the Bulldogs away in the first half last night.
The thing that, and you're saying on that 20-minute mark, I think the difference is, so if you look at the Bulldogs team when they go on to they've got 2 bigger front rowers when they go on. So that first 20 minutes they're playing with, and they're playing with a bigger pack. So they've got guys like Sam Hughes, and they're big guys. And then when they hit that 20-minute mark, that's when they bring in guys like Curtis Moran, Harry, Jamin Sat, or your Bailey Hayward, where they become a more mobile pack, and therefore they probably they're more like, they can't wrestle because they're not big enough, and that's no disrespect to them or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I think, and they're also more mobile and they can probably put a little bit pressure up. The one thing I am seeing too, though, is a lot of teams, and we spoke about it, I think, on this podcast last week to a degree as well, is teams are happy to take that 6 again on the try line to a degree, because they'll go, we'll get off. If we get penalised for it's a soft penalty, and we'll just back it. And then sooner or later, they'll just let it keep going, and because they're not just going to keep waving their hair unless we get the guy from last night, But that's where I see that. But we were talking about that defence there is the thing that is so good about Penrith. It's so good about the Storm, and Sam Walker starting to develop there. Is the reason why they're so good is they keep coming back to that weakness, and they're just relentless, and they keep back to it, and that's where I think that on both sides of on ruck, but more on the right side than the left side is that communication between that edge back rower, the half, and the centre has to be perfect. And I had a look too, is the Bulldogs need possession, and they need possession to win their game, because if you look at it,
I don't disagree with that.
And if you look at their attack, and we'll talk about the Warriors' defence shortly, but if you've got a disciplined defence line that don't take decoys and just hold their on their toes, they can't get through majority of the time. They'll get, unless someone misses a one-on-one tackle. So their default is a kick, and and they're probably, of last night, more than half of their points come from kicks, dinks in behind, and different things. And also too, there was no real pressure on them last night. And as that pressure goes up, the ability to follow a system and not make a bad decision is going to increase.
Let's look at the Bulldogs' attack now, which will then in turn take us to the Warriors' defence. I've already said I believe the Dogs have a mental toughness about them in defence.
Yeah.
And I think they also have one in general. So that speaks to the recruitment. That also speaks to Seraldo and the club's defence over the whole issue of the fella that didn't like the tough training. Now, whether they've took that to the nth degree there and took it too far, I don't know. But they've obviously tried to recruit a certain type of player. But the other thing that I really want to give Seraldo credit for is the players have a better skill level than the Warriors. So when I look at skills, I'm looking like the way they carry the ball, the decisions they make in terms of hitting holes, the way they approach the line, of the hip square, if they've got numbers around the ball, etc. So the Bulldogs were better at that than the Warriors. As I've already said, the Warriors dropped off that quite significantly after 20 minutes. And, that could be conditioning, that could be the quality of player, the mental toughness, if you like. The Bulldogs also played a style of football very early that was quite lateral, and they had plenty of shapes that were expansive. Like I said, they had good shapes around the ball. The hips were square. There was threats coming everywhere. The two halves had a prod at the line as well. So literally the Bulldogs were throwing quite a lot at the Warriors. They also went through a phase where they were moving the Warriors around +1. They were doing that both in exit and also in good ball. They were moving them laterally. They were moving the Warriors laterally before shifting to go back at them. Because what happens when you move a team around laterally? They move up, forward, across and back, and up and across and back, and they get tired when they have to come back. The bigger, and this is where I think again Webster got the interchanges wrong, etc., etc. What the Dogs did really well though, and I am throwing a lot of nice things at the Dogs, is they mixed around their game plan quite well. So if they weren't going sideways, they played through, and when the Warriors worked out they were playing through, they went sideways. They got that mix really well. There's no secret sauce here though, Rosie. The Dogs were dropping a lot of ball early, and the Warriors weren't. That's why they were 12-0 up. And again, that speaks to mental toughness.
I see. I think that the Bulldogs' attack in the green zone is a little predictable.
I agree, and I don't think they've still got enough strike to break open a team that can deal with it. I totally agree there.
And the only way that they're going to do, and for one reason again last night, and people can say whatever being critical, Burton didn't run the ball again last night. And if you look
at the start and then dropped off, yeah.
The line breaks that they made were the line break from kick out, which was just a bad defensive. Egan slipped, and there is a technically bad movement in the Warriors' defensive line that we'll get to.